this is my favorite podcast episode to date. Just saying. Why is there only women on women in tech panels?
Realistically, you've got to get comfortable not being in a comfortable situation.
How do you deal with,
bad criticism?
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Real Ones. Today I'm joined by the one and only Farah-Ann Al-Derzi. Thank you, Farah, for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I've heard so much about you. And obviously, the content world has not seen enough of you, in my opinion. So I'm really glad that you agreed to come on.
Thank you so much. I usually try to be behind the scenes.
No, see, it's always nice to hear the voices of those folks as well. Like, I feel like, you never really, you get to get the full picture. And I feel like it's nice to have a good balance of the front-facing and, operational stuff. So, Baytukum, right?
Yes.
That is the startup that you're the CEO of. I'd love to know. I mean, I obviously know, but I have to pretend to not know. What does Baytukum do?
Okay, so we basically operate in the real estate crowdfunding space.
Yeah.
So essentially, fractional ownership is what we do. So just to bring it back to how we started, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So we actually were called Baytukum at the time, and we started off with an initiative to kind of capitalize on a demographic that nobody really was thinking about. So we started off with thinking about female Emiratis. And the reason for that is because we saw that there's a lot of potential. There was a lot of research that went into it, and there was a lot of potential in that area, but nobody had tapped into it. Right. So we started off that way, and our founder is Emirati as well. So there was that element of trust that was also harnessed as a result of it. And so we started, and because the community is so small, one person told the next, and so on and so forth, and word kind of spread like wildfire. And even that community, they had friends which are not Emirati, and then they started to talk about it, and others were also like, oh, you know what, we also want to get in on that project, because our aim was really to educate and enable them through our platform to sort of better their futures. And so a lot of women also came back to us and said, well, look, can we also be a part of this? So we said, yeah, all right. We opened the doors a little bit more. And these women, they went back and they spoke to their partners or the brothers and whatnot. They said, look, we're part of this company. We're thinking of investing. And obviously, there's always a lot of skepticism when money's involved. So what we do is we hold a lot of coffee events. So we invite people to come and speak to us, come and see us. We're actual people. We're not just cogs in a system. Right. We hold different seminars as well. So people are free to join them. We're the only ones that do it in both Arabic and English. And we get to have that interaction with people as a whole. And so as a result of that, we got a lot of men that were like, well, hang on, why is my wife or my daughter investing with you guys? Why can't I invest with you guys? Or why can't the whole family invest with you guys? And I said, you know what? That's the kind of platform we will, start to be, essentially, because now we have a holistic overview of the kind of business that we want to run. Obviously, it's a business that's making money and whatnot. But on the other side of things, we wanted to harvest this sort of family-like atmosphere whereby there's that trust element. And, we can look at this company to make us feel not particularly, safe, because I can't actually use that word, but, just to foster that whole family atmosphere. And so we actually had families investing. We had a gentleman who came to us and said, look, my daughters and my wife, they know nothing about investments, completely green. And I want them to have the ability to create something for themselves in the future whereby they won't have to rely on someone else. So we said, all right, jump on board. We can help you guys, and help them. We did. And now they're investors in several properties.
Wow. So, this is very interesting, because I've had other sort of fractional real estate sort of investing kind of companies. In fact, we were just putting out an episode for that just now before this. But yours seems very community first.
Yes.
Very, and it's not just, it doesn't sound like a tagline to me. I haven't been to any, signposts of that, but at the same time, it really does sound like the family, the unit is way more involved in the decision-making process. And the thing that I grew up in Dubai, and what I realized was that most people did not have that investing sort of savviness in general, like the whole population.
Yeah.
I feel like we're not able to invest in US stocks. Like everyone in the US would just be like, yeah, S&P 500, boom. Like, we just like 7% every year. Like, whereas here we're just like FD into like an account and like, like till kingdom come kind of a thing. Like, so, it's not common to have that kind of knowledge. So what are you really, sort of teaching these people at these events? Like, what do you, obviously building trust is an important thing and you're credible in being able to deliver those things, but what are the questions that they're asking? What are they confused about?
So sometimes it's so simple. I mean, for you, it's very simple, but for them, it's very complex.
Yep.
There's a lot of hesitation for a start, because giving money to somebody is always a point which, it's always a situation where you're like, I really don't know if this person is going to do something or steal my money or what have you. So you kind of have to dispel that myth in their minds for a start.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, they'll ask you things like, simple things like, oh, I don't know what inflation is, or, I don't know what other types of asset classes there are, or I don't know how this business works. What's the model? What do I pay? Do I have to pay in installments? They ask really intelligent questions for themselves, so I won't discount it. But for others, it might seem like a simple question.
But I actually don't think most people, if you walked up to, in America, they do a lot of street interviews. Right?
Yeah.
If you just walked up to someone today and like, hey, what's inflation right now?
Yeah.
They probably won't know. So it's not like an unwarranted question at all. I completely think that getting them to trust you to an extent where they feel vulnerable enough that, I can actually ask the questions that I want to ask. I think that's a great accomplishment in itself. So before we, go into the full real estate swing of things, I'd love to know more about your journey, right? Because I think the people that have come on this podcast are all phenomenal in their own right, work and run companies that that are changing the real estate landscape in all sorts of ways. But I really like to get to know the people behind these companies. And I'd love to know your story, 7-year-old Farah, right? Like, tell me about that. Like, what did you want to become way back when? Obviously, I don't know if it was to become a real estate magnate or what that was, but what was that for you?
So when I was very young, I was absolute trouble for my parents. Still am. Quite honestly.
Yeah.
I always like to challenge the status quo, so to speak. And the thing is, we had this dynamic at home between my dad and I. We both butt heads all the time, but it's not a bad thing, because we're both opinionated. We both like to have a debate, albeit sometimes it's a heated debate.
I feel you, trust me.
But my dad's a lawyer, so I kind of wanted to aspire to that. And he really did set the bar up quite high for me. So it was something that I was trying to get to. Obviously, as the years went by, things did change. So when I started on my journey, I actually started when I was 13. I took a summer job at an estate agent, and in summer, my birthday's in summer, so it was then that at 14, I sold my first property.
What? Yeah.
And, for a 13 to 14-year-old, first of all, getting a salary at that age was phenomenal. I got about 525, 535, something like that, pounds. Yeah. So that was really, really, really big. My dad used to give me about £5 pocket money. Do you know what I mean? So a week. So making that kind of money, I was just like, you know what? I can do better.
Okay.
And then I went to uni and I went through the motions. I went through the whole, I'm not really sure which direction I want to go in. You have to sort of manage family expectations as well, because I come from a Middle Eastern family. So, doctor, lawyer, that sort of thing.
It's the same. Indian family is the same thing, like, literally.
Exactly. So you go through the motions and you try to figure out where you fit, and then eventually you kind of settle on something. And straight out of uni, I wanted to be able to do something for myself. Just to get away from what I was comfortable with. And so I moved out. I went to Luxembourg, of all places, and I joined KPMG in Luxembourg.
Okay, wild.
Yeah.
Luxembourg, not KPMG.
I joined KPMG in Luxembourg.
Yes.
And then that was a really, really good experience for me. I was an auditor there. I started out as a junior, and then just worked my way up, sorry. And eventually Deloitte in Abu Dhabi poached me. And so I joined Deloitte. And then after Deloitte, I moved back to the UK.
Okay.
At the time, I wasn't sure which direction I wanted my life to go in at that point. Usually when I go back to the UK, it's because I really feel like I needed to be grounded. And so I joined a little accounting firm just to kind of do something, because I really just can't sit on my hands. I can't twiddle my thumbs. I've just got to do something. Yeah. And so after that, I started working at AXA Investment Managers.
Okay.
So I was the financial controller there. And it was also in real estate. So that was the sector that I was in. And it was so interesting because I got to work with a lot of pan-European investment funds. Mm-hmm. I got to work with US investment funds, and I got to work on devcos, which was an amazing experience because now one of them, which I can see, is on 22 Bishopsgate in London.
Wow.
So for me, that was such an exciting project to be a part of. And I remember when they topped off the final layer of the building, it was such a proud moment for me because I felt like I was really part of that whole process, and I was really involved. So then after that, I got married.
Okay.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you. So we've been married for a couple of years. Don't ask me because I always forget.
Oh, so it's like a trick question.
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure this goes to your husband.
So we've been married for 5 years.
Okay.
I hope. And it's been a fantastic experience. But then after we got married, we were just trying to figure out where we wanted to live and, you know, what opportunity we were going to get that was best between us. And so I moved here eventually. And for the first few months, it was really difficult because I just didn't know what direction I can go in. I was in a really niche industry, and the companies that were available to provide these services always sort of kept their own cliques. So it was really difficult to get into it. And then one day I jumped on board with two different companies, one which was a job that I did as a favor to a friend, and then another one which was a DIFC asset management company. It was a great experience overall. No. I mean, and then I joined, and then I went back to the UK actually, and then I got poached by Latifa. But that is a really cool story.
That is awesome. Yeah. Like you've been everywhere and you've done
You should hear how Latifa poached me.
I'm down to hear. What was it?
So basically, I went back to the UK again because I wanted to ground myself after my last job, and I left my husband here. Okay. So I went back, and a lot of people calling me. They said, "Listen, we know you're free now. You've stopped working, and we want to offer you jobs and whatnot." And I kept declining all of them. I was like, "Look, thank you so much for the opportunity, but I just need to sort out my headspace."
To anyone listening to this podcast, I know these are really good problems to have, and your problems might not be safe, but that's an ideal position to be in.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. And then I went back to the UK and had that little moment to myself, said no to a lot of job offers. And then there was this person that stalked my profile on LinkedIn. Okay. Yep. And I really didn't bother having a look. And then I don't know why, but 3 days after, I had this little inkling. I just wanted to know, who is this person? And I had a look and I was like, oh, okay, lovely. She's a founder of 2 companies and lovely individual from what I can see. And then 2 seconds later, I get a message saying, I've got a job opportunity for you. Can we have a chat? And at the beginning, I said, listen, I played the whole thing, the same spiel. Look, thank you very much for the opportunity. I just don't want it. And she said, listen, just hear me out for 15 minutes. And here I am.
Oh, wow. That must have been some cold pitch.
It was good. Yeah. It was really good. Because she really capitalized on my weak points. She brought in the element of real estate, which I absolutely love. Yes. And she brought in the help factor, which is being able to help women kind of benefit themselves in their future and whatnot. So she really just, picked the two
purpose
points
and passion,
exactly,
pretty much.
Exactly. And she just went for them and I was like, okay, I'm sold. That's it.
Wow. That's an awesome story, I think. And it's not every day that you get poached on LinkedIn. So for anyone listening, LinkedIn is useful. Keep at it. You got this.
Yes, you do.
So you spoke about the Big-4. I have a bone to pick with those guys. Not because they, rejected all my applications forever. No. But just because, I've always wondered how, a lot of my friends are at Big-4s, right? And the way that they, think about life is very much, this year I'm going to become associate. Next year I'm going to become whatever partner. I have no idea what the progression is. But it's very linear in the thinking process. And to go from something like that, where you have a guaranteed, stable, income and growth and things like that, to then be like, I am going to become the CEO of a tech company, is not really the easiest leap to make for any individual. So there's a lot of Big-4 folks that I know who are aspiring entrepreneurs, and also other consulting firms. Because people are going into consulting now, in my opinion, and feel free to call me out on this, anyone listening, to exit, not to stay. Right? At least the people of my generation, I'm not saying that you're in a different one, but the people of my generation are not career, not company for your whole life kind of people, right? They want to enrich their lives. They're going to pick up the skills that they need, and then they're going to move on to the next thing, right? Yet one thing has not changed in all that time.
What's that?
It's the risk appetite and the ability to be like, how do I make that leap of, let me go and do this thing, and that nothing but rocket science is actually rocket science, right? So how did you make that leap?
That's a really good story. Really good question, sorry. So basically when I joined audit the first time, it was a bit of a mistake. I actually was showing a friend how to apply to a company because he wanted to join. And then I just carried on with the application just to show him. I know this sounds like an unbelievable story, but I promise you, hand on my heart, this is the Bible truth. And eventually my application was submitted. He also managed to submit. And then that's how I got into audit. But somewhere along the line, as you progress, you pick up so many skills, right? And they're not skills that you might always pick up from a book. Like you could be book smart, but it doesn't mean that you're street smart or business smart. You know, you have that business savvy nature. So you pick up all of these skills. You pick up how to speak with people of all ages and positions. You build your network. Aside from the fact that you're exhausted most of the time because you've got deadlines to meet that are near impossible at times, but still you do get there. But that also teaches you time management. That teaches you the ability to know what direction you're going into, and which is a good direction, which is a bad direction, essentially. You will get to learn that about yourself. You would learn to pick up good and bad criticism, and how to deal with that good and bad criticism.
How do you deal with, actually it's going to be a bit.
No, it's
how
okay.
do you deal with, bad
criticism?
criticism?
Okay, so with bad criticism, you kind of just have to take it with a pinch of salt. Sometimes there's truth to it, right? But you can't just react badly to it automatically. You just have to kind of take a step back and just look inwards and say, well, there is some truth to it. This part, let me work on it on myself. If there isn't, just chuck it out the door.
Right.
Simple.
It's kind of like what you can control and what you can't.
Exactly.
And what you're actually responsible for versus what you're not.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, right? As founders or as CEOs of, these kind of like large companies, you tend to take all the blame on yourself for just about everything, right? Everything bad that happens, it's your fault. And everything good that happens, you try to push others in the limelight for, because that's their moment, right?
Absolutely.
In that process, sometimes you internalize, all the wrong problems. How do you kind of juggle that?
It's a hard one. So for me, I compartmentalize a lot of things. I try to address problems one at a time. Because otherwise you'll have dumpster fire on your hands.
100%.
You're trying to grab this one and then this one, and you're sort of half doing that one and so on. So you really have to just take one at a time, prioritize. There's no such thing as being busy. It's just about priority. Right. So prioritize what's needed now. Sometimes have a look at the biggest task that you have to look at, and then just try and go from there. Turn out one fire before you turn out another. That's pretty much it. And yes, you're going to feel the burn. Sometimes you're going to have that weight on you. But sometimes, even in a team, you might not have to bear that burden by yourself. You can share it. Everybody comes with a certain skill set. And sometimes it might not be within your circle of competence, but it might be part of someone else's. So utilize that. If you feel that somebody has criticized you or somebody's put that burden on you for whatever reason, and you find that, okay, there's this space that someone else can plug in and can teach me and can help me, then great, I'll use that. I don't have to always keep it on me. I don't always have to be the person that will take the full blame, so to speak. I think it's easier that you share I mean, look, for me, I will always put my team in the limelight. But then again, you ask any of my team members and they'll do the exact same thing. And for us, what we do is we shoulder each other in times of crisis and times of need, whenever you need motivation. So for us, we have this ecosystem of, nobody has to bear the brunt by themselves.
Yeah.
That's just how we work.
I think that's amazing. I think it's a great culture to be a part of.
Yep.
You've spoken about this before, about how you treat your team as family.
Yeah.
Right? Now, this is like on Twitter, this would be red flag. Just because that's just what tech Twitter does, right?
Yeah.
We call out anything that we can't understand or that we can't have ourselves, pretty much. So how do you, because a lot of people, conventional wisdom is that you treat your startup team as a football team.
Right.
Place the best players in the best positions to succeed, et cetera, et cetera. How do you view family versus football in this case?
I think they're actually synonymous. So, look, your best players will give you utility, right? But it also doesn't mean that your family members that you operate with won't do the same thing. When I say family member, it's a culture that you cultivate. It's the ability to listen to each other's concerns. It's the ability to be there in the darkest hours. We're a startup, right? We're in the space where things, get immensely difficult, and you just need that motivation. And someone will be there. Somebody will be there to shoulder some of your burdens, and they will be there to help you. It's one of those. That's why I always say it's like a family. It doesn't mean that nobody has any utility. You can't just. All of my staff are, and my colleagues are fantastic football players, if you want to put them on the pitch. But does it mean that I only treat them as staff and colleagues? No. We have this relationship whereby we can go out to lunch together. When I was pregnant, I'll just give you a little example. When I was pregnant, people were always very helpful, right? When I was at work. And then the night before I had my son, I was on a site inspection. I took my colleague with me. I was like, listen, I'm waddling right now on a roof. In case I fall down, please just grab me. The next morning, I was still working. I was in the hospital. I was still working and calling and texting. And, I wanted to make sure that they were okay for the time that I wasn't available, right? That's how we do things.
You're kidding me. On the day.
Yeah.
What?
A few hours before I went into the operating room, I gave them my husband's number, and I was like, listen, if you need anything, I don't have my phone, so you can reach out to my husband, and he'll ask me, and I'll relay the message. So that's how we did things. And then once I came back, I went back after sort of 2 weeks.
Okay.
The reason being is when you're an adult, you've shaped your life for X amount of years, right? You know who you are. You've picked up habits that you wanted. You've chucked out ones that you didn't, and you've done away with individuals that you didn't want to have in your life anymore. So you've had that many years to become a person. And then you go into this phase of matrescence, and you don't know what's happening. You have this baby, and then all of a sudden, you don't know who you are anymore. You've basically just become the cow to a calf, right? That's your job. And then you have no pieces to pick up of who you were before, because there is somebody that's in need of you. It's not like, I forgot to water the plant, I'll go get another one. It's not one of those situations, right? And so my team was so supportive to the point where I started working my second week. I was like, guys, I just need to do something which was a semblance of what I was doing before, who I was before, just something small. So, but by the way, matrescence it's like adolescence, but for mums, basically going through that phase, because you become someone else. And so one of our board of directors, bless his soul, he's so lovely. He surprised me. He likes to do, he likes to work with his hands and whatnot. And he surprised me. He built a crib in the office.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, that's family. But that's also the support that I would get, because I want to be at the front of my team to be able to manage things. But my team is supportive, just like a family.
Wow.
That's how I combine the two. That's why I said it's synonymous.
My team's going to listen to this and be like, Joel, you better be building some cribs. Or they're just going to be like, you just send us a Talabat Panadol, like whenever we had a headache. Like, that's not good enough, bro.
Fair enough.
No, but that's so lovely to hear. I've not really heard that story before.
Okay.
I mean, not from any of the guests I've had on, and it's not really a common thing, I think. So it's job well done to you for cultivating that kind of culture at your workplace. You spoke about motherhood, and it's something that you've spoken about passionately before as well, right? And you make it a point to, I remember reading something like making flexible work hours for mothers in the context of like, when, and I think parents in general, when they need to, go pick up their kids from school, etc., whatever it might be. Talk to me about that and, being CEO, because it's interesting, right? Like there's this personal part, and again, it's kind of the family football thing as well. Like it's you want to do those things, but how do you make sure that people don't, misuse that privilege? Because it, like, in a culture where everyone trusts everyone and, we're all living in utopia, that works like a charm. But it's not always the case. What are those kind of indicators in people that you see that are, they're like, not really living up to the promises that they made? Like, okay, I'm just going to do this instead of like go for another job interview or this and that. Not saying that as a totally insecure leader or anything like that.
Right,
that's not, but at the same time, I think it is valid to, like, how do you kind of, just trust to, like, a leader would be like, how do you just trust them to do that?
So look, we take things from a logical perspective. Everyone's an adult. We're not going to treat you like children. I don't need to micromanage you. I have so much to do, already, and you already have so much to do. Autonomy is key. You have your responsibilities, you have your deadlines, work whatever hours you want, but get it done by that deadline. That's how we do it. So I'll just go back to a story of me. I had a little bit of an issue at the beginning because my son wouldn't sleep. And so if I went to work 9 to 5, 9 to 6, whatever it is, and I clocked in like regular and I did my job, so to speak, in the regular fashion, I would be A, absolutely exhausted, and B, I wouldn't be able to provide any value add. I would just be thinking in my head, oh, this baby, I've left it alone. What am I going to do? What if something happens? I'm missing out on all these years with him, or all these moments with him, sorry. And it just creates that anxiety for you. And because you're thinking about it, you're not really working to the best of your ability. So what we've done is we've said, look, if you're not feeling well, stay at home. If you're having to pick up your kids, go pick up your kids. But make sure you hit those deadlines. So for me, I have this gap in my day. I'm just like, guys, I will leave from this hour to this hour. It's my only time for my family. I'll work after hours. I'll work till midnight, 1 o'clock, whatever it is. You are an adult. Take responsibility for what you've got. And this is how we do it. Our whole core team has been brought on for the specific reason that they all operate in this manner. If you need help, you go and ask for help. You can ask at the 11th hour. We'll always be there at some point, But we have had people onboarded before, one person actually, and that person just didn't work within the remit of our mindset. And so you were able to see that quite clearly. It was sort of like coming to work, demotivated, deflated, taking advantage of these benefits that we would ordinarily give to everyone at the office. And so you realize the small little things. It's first like, oh, I need to go sort out things with my kids. I need to go do this. It's missing deadlines. It's half finished work. It's, it compounds, right? Yeah. And then that's when you realize, okay, there's something really wrong with this, let's have a chat. And then the let's have a chat is more like, look, these are what we've seen. You can do better, because the last thing somebody wants to do is get rid of staff, right? Yeah. It's a hard conversation. And then, you want to better them. You want to be able to see, okay, what's your skill set? What can we improve? What can we make better? What will create utility at the end of the day? And unfortunately, that just wasn't there. We give opportunities. Some people make mistakes from the outset, right? But we give opportunities. And when people don't take them, there's not much we can do. You can't force people, right? I'm not in the business of forcing people. If you don't want to do it, you don't want to do it. That's it. But you can consistently see now that as a result of what we've done and how we've approached this, it's been completely successful. You work within the boundaries of the hours that you can afford, right? And the outcome will pay you dividends, by the way. You will retain your staff. Your staff won't go anywhere else because you don't have this product anywhere else. I don't know if you've ever known a company that would do this.
Yeah, no, this is news to me.
For example, somebody has stayed up all night working. You don't need to come into work at 8 or 9 o'clock.
Yeah, of course.
Sleep in, get refreshed, come into the office. If you're feeling really, really downtrodden or what have you, we've got a sleep pod in the office. Go take a nap, come back. Really? Because you want to utilize somebody to the best of their abilities. They have to provide you with utility at some point, right? And this is a really good method to do it. If your staff are happy, you're happy. The business flourishes.
Yep.
Everything is done on time. Everyone takes responsibility for their tasks.
Yeah.
And that's it.
So why don't corporates get this?
Oh, I don't know. I've been wondering this. I've worked in corporate. Like a corporate life was my, was my daily kind of routine. And honestly, this was the first place I saw it happen. I think in corporate, you kind of just are a cog in the system.
It's a scale, right? It's so
exactly.
massive.
I mean, when you scale up, it's really difficult to be able to pick out all these people.
Yep.
When we started, we were so small. The core team was so small. So it's very easy to kind of say, I want this kind of person. I want this kind of person. This person will be a good fit. But when you're scaling up and you're a company of like 300, 500 employees or more, it's really difficult to be quite meticulous in who you're selecting. Right. So that rule doesn't always apply to everybody. You know who you are as a core team. You will make accommodations for others who will join that might not fit the build 100%. But if they see that and use it as sort of like the model, the template, they might actually change how they think and how they operate to kind of fit that new narrative.
Well, that's great. I just realized how much we've been talking about like leadership, basically. It's like, oh wait, this is a real estate podcast. So coming back to the real estate piece, and everything that you said really resonates with me. I think that is the way to approach it, because I don't have any set mandates for like our team as well. Yeah. Because they all get shit done. That's it. Like that's the stuff on the wall. I'm just kidding. We don't have a wall yet, but get shit done. And with that said, coming back to the real estate piece, I think this niche of let's go and support Emirati women, like that was the first initial target market, and obviously you've expanded that out now. What are the patterns that you saw that are different in the way that Emirati women invest in real estate versus general, or anything interesting that you've really seen in the data there that's, that just kind of caught you by surprise?
There was actually something recently that caught me by surprise. Although we started with Emirati women, female Emiratis, and we expanded to open the doors to everybody, it's still so strange that the majority of our investors are female Emiratis. I would have thought it would have been the guys, quite honestly, because that's usually a guy's game, right? Usually when you think of investments, it's always like a guy that's always at the forefront. Not really. I mean, you wouldn't think Emirati woman, would you? And so that was something that surprised me recently. When we looked at the demographics, when we looked at our results, they were the ones that were investing the most. They were the ones that were repeat investors, and they really were going for it. And I didn't expect that at all. Yeah. And for us, it was just so peculiar that we can create this kind of platform that would benefit everyone, but they would be at the forefront. Right. Yeah. Sorry, what was your second question?
Just the data piece, the
data. Yeah. So we've seen that predominantly people have been going for smaller ticket items. And the reason for that is because if you are green, you tend to have a little bit of hesitation. You want to dip your toes in the water, but you also want to see a benefit. Right. And so even with regards to a minimum, we said we want to increase our minimum bit so you can actually see the impact of your investment on a smaller ticket item. So instead of listing something for like 1-2 million, whatever the case may be, we've done them at sort of 500 or less, give or take. It's very hard to source them, very hard to source good deals at that amount. But when you do, great, you get a sweet spot, and it gets funded so quick. I think our first deal was funded by 14 women, Emirati women, in 7 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is 500K.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And
Yeah.
a ready residential.
Yeah.
What? That's
and
crazy.
From the time that it was purchased until now, if we look at the current market price, it's 550 plus.
Okay.
We got it for 430.
Gotcha.
And that's in the span of, what month are we in? That's 1 year now.
Wow. We were speaking about how Emirati women are still your core prime investor base. The way I actually heard about you was from a friend who said that there was this lady on the panel who actually asked, why is there only women on women in tech panels?
I know who this person is.
Yes. And why aren't there any men on these panels? So I've never heard anyone say that before. I'm sure people may have said it, but I've never heard anyone say that.
Okay.
Talk to me about like why you want men on those panels and what you want the conversation to be about.
Okay. So it can't be a one-sided conversation. Like, I appreciate the fact that, you know, women are speaking to one another, they're trying to help one another, etc. But you want to be inclusive. You want to, you know, you want diversity in the conversation. You want to start a dialogue, and it can't just be one-sided. For me, just like we are sitting right now, right? I'm not sitting across from, you know, a woman doing my day, you know, all of my business with a woman, although, by the way, our core team is all women. But, you know, you work and operate in an atmosphere where both genders work together. Yeah. There's like a synergy between the two. You can't have one without the other. You know, I've had such great people in my life who have elevated me, educated me, provided me with knowledge that I would have never thought I could have picked up because it wasn't in books. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without their help. So I think a dialogue really needs to be started about what part have you contributed to? You know, what part have you aided in this matter? You know, how has one side helped the other? You just need to have an inclusive, diverse conversation, right? That's how I feel things should go. And at the time when your friend...
Should we give her a shout out?
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
Shout out to Sylvia.
Sylvia Al-Derzi, mother of podcasts. If you're listening to this, and I hope you are, because this podcast is going to be huge.
I mean, look, she's amazing. But at the time, I remember when we were having that conversation before everything. I remember I listened, I listened to the one from the year before, to that panel discussion, and I really remember thinking to myself, well, why isn't there a guy in this? I mean, it needs to be open to both genders. You know, you want to bring in one side to give their perspective, their part of the conversation, but you also need to bring in the other side to give their part and their perspective. And then you have a conversation about it and you see where things filter through and where you can find utility in that conversation and, you know, where you can chuck some stereotypes out of that conversation and so on. Yeah. So it's the idea that you can show people, especially people in an audience, sometimes you have impressionable individuals. Sometimes you have people looking up to you and saying, oh, you know what, I like what, you know, where they've gone with this. I like the fact that they've incorporated both sides into a conversation. I appreciate that, you know, the opposite gender has actually, you know, come to the aid of the women in terms of benefiting them for X, Y, Z. It's impossible to say that you do everything by yourself. There is no such thing, irrespective of whether you're a guy or a girl. You will always do things with the help of others. You will have an ecosystem of individuals around you. There is no way that you can do one, you know, you can start a business by yourself. Yeah. There is, you know, you can have the idea, you plant that seed, but then ultimately you're going to need people, right? And that's how you get to success. And it's the same thing when you're growing in your career. You will have people, right? But you won't only have women. Like, it's great to turn to women. Trust me. I really know. I work with a group of women. We understand each other very well. We have our pain points that we can address together. But at the same time, our external individuals that we work with are all men. And their aim is always to benefit the unit as a whole. And to benefit the unit as a whole, you have to be, you know, in that conversation together. You have to work together. So that's why, for me, it was a strange moment where I thought, okay, well, you know, you're talking about success and women and real estate, but you haven't really spoken about success in general, because success is not only defined by the fact that you're a woman and you've achieved different things. Success is also defined by the interactions you have with others, the relationships that you build, the ecosystem that you've got going on, you know, the help that you provide. It's not just one-sided. So for me, that was a really strange thing at the time of, you know, we should have a conversation with everyone.
So I've met a few of these real estate brokerage heads and real estate tech bros, all of like, and my guess is, I mean, even if they were invited, is that they would be afraid of saying the wrong thing at these panels, because what's like, you know, you're kind of tiptoeing on a very fine line there, and there's a lot of wrong things that you could say that is in nuance, could get taken out of context or whatever, like, or just flat out wrong in your thinking, right? And most men, is in my opinion, would probably be afraid of that, right? So what are the conversations that they need to be prepared to have that they're not currently, like as men?
Get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right? Realistically, you've got to get comfortable not being in a comfortable situation.
Yeah.
And so if you're starting that dialogue, and if you said something that has been taken out of context for whatever reason, then just talk about it. You know, discuss it. It creates great conversation. During that panel discussion, by the way, there was myself and there was another lady who had very opposing views to one part of the question. And I said, I remember at the initial discussion, before we even went to the panel, I said, I'm not going to answer this question because my views are completely different. And I remember Sylvia turned around and was like, no, that's exactly what we need. We need a discussion to start. And so even though there is misinterpretation, you can correct it by having a discussion, right? Nobody's going to throw their toys out of the pram and, you know, cause a kerfuffle. Conversation is all that's needed.
A kerfuffle?
Yeah.
What's that? What's a kerfuffle? Okay, this is the kind of thing the men are scared. They don't understand the words.
No. It's a British thing.
It's a British thing. Fair enough. So that's super interesting. And you said a point about being comfortable when you're uncomfortable, I guess.
Yeah.
Or no, you said get comfortable being uncomfortable. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we were chatting outside and we were talking about the quote that you sort of, you know, carry with you. And for our audience, what is that quote that you sort of carry with you when you're doing your day-to-day?
Life begins at the end of your comfort zone. And it was really something that resonated with me. I mean, I have a great amount of quotes that I can give you. Obviously, I'm not a Pinterest board, but I got enough.
Got a few in the tank.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it was something that was said to me a long time ago. I was at university. I had been diagnosed with epilepsy at the time, and it just felt like my world had fallen apart. So I think it was my brother who said it to me or something. And I was sort of in this mindset of, you know, I've got to be this person that, you know, the stereotypical sick person thing. You know, everyone makes these adjustments and whatnot to cater to you. You sort of, you know, you feel like a delicate flower. If something happens, then, you know, it'll be the end of the world. And that's not to anyone's detriment, right? Everyone tries to do it with, you know, with thought and love and care and compassion. And they do it to benefit you as opposed to, you know, make it a negative. But it was negative for me. And so my brother once turned around and he said, listen, your life begins at the end of your comfort zone. And it was true. I was in a place where I was very comfortable, sort of being coddled and feeling this place of security that I felt like I didn't go anywhere. Like I was stagnant. Nothing was moving. And so I really decided to move that goalpost. I said thank you to the family and my support system. Like, thank you for being there for me. Thank you for doing this. But I need you to understand that my nature is somebody who's very tenacious, somebody who likes a challenge, somebody who will push boundaries. And I want to go back to that. I don't want to be defined by what I was diagnosed with. I want to be defined by the person I am. And so I moved that goalpost and I ventured out of the country. I ventured out of my family's home. I traveled to lots of places. I was in Germany, I was in Luxembourg, I was in Abu Dhabi, I went back to the UK, I'm here now in Dubai, and lots of traveling in between. And so I really, really pushed the envelope. And as things went on, I kind of, made it, I'm not going to go bungee jumping, obviously. That's not something that's
I'm not,
great.
it's interesting. I just don't take those kind of risks. Like I'm good with not jumping out of a plane or like, jumping off a bridge or whatever.
There's certain things that I'm okay with.
Yes.
And so like, as you push these boundaries, you will always get out of you will get comfortable with where you are and then push it again and then get out of that. And then you'll find yourself in this really interesting place. You're going to fail a lot, by the way. I failed so much along the way, but that failure paid dividends. It wasn't the end, right? Nothing happened. I just learned from it, got up, dusted myself, and moved on. And that was something that I'd learned from. And so as you learn, as you move the goalpost, as you get out of your comfort zone, you tend to get places. And it led me to here. I'm in this place now. So if I go back and I think to myself, had I not listened or had I not heard that quote, it probably wouldn't have propelled me to move. And so for me, that was really important. Like it was a factor that shook me. It was a quote that really shook me at the time. And then I just went, go. And go I did.
That's awesome. And you've done a phenomenal job of it.
I hope so.
Your brother is probably not giving you like, he's probably just like, hey, I told you the quote. He's, I have a sister and we have a very like, in the context of, she would just be like, hey, you did that thing that I told you to do 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And now you're saying it's because someone else. I told you that first. Like, just take credit for it. Like
very true.
Very,
very, very true. Like, oh, wait, I remember that thing from 10 years ago. People remember these little things. It's like, hey. I should get credit for this, not you.
No, 100%. So there's obviously a lot of real estate hardos listening to this podcast who are dying to hear, what are your top 3 predictions for the real estate market in the UAE?
This is a really difficult question. I always say, it's like I'm not a fortune teller with a crystal ball, right?
I have to ask it because, the fans...
That's okay.
There's about 300 subscribers that really want to know.
That's okay. So what we've seen recently in the market is you've seen this uptick, and especially now that the RERA index has changed and that calculator has sort of changed as well along with it, you've seen the rents go up significantly. I can tell you for myself, I'm a renter.
Could you just explain that? Because nobody's talked about that on the podcast, the RERA index and the calculator and the rents increasing and things like that.
Yeah, so the RERA index is basically an index to say that the rents in this area should be between X to Y. Right. And then if you're below that by a certain percentage, then there is an ability for you to increase it by X percentage. So recently, because they changed the formula of the RERA index, the rent went up. Okay. Significantly. Right. And in some areas, your rent might have increased by 15,000. Okay. Or what have you. Maybe it's only 4,000. On some of our properties, it increased by 4,000, whatever it is. And so as a result of that, we've seen this trend that's actually coming out whereby people are wanting to become homeowners, right? Because they're thinking, okay, well, hold on. The amount that I'm paying towards rent, I could definitely pay it towards a down payment and then my monthly installments. So a lot of people have kind of shifted their mindset from, I'm just going to rent to, no, I'm going to take a dive and I'm going to own property. And that's going to be my forever home. Or it could be a home that you live in and then later on, you'll rent it, you'll sell it, you'll do whatever you want with it. So that's really one of the things that has actually came out in the wash recently. And that made it harder for us because, you have to cater to your audience, right? So increase rent, increase price, difficult to match it, right? Yeah. To a good balance between what your valuation report is telling you and what your seller wants at the end of the day. So that's one of the things that I really saw in the market. There's this uptick in homeowners, new people who want to buy their own homes as a result of the uptick in rent. Yeah. You see a huge uptick in prices now, again, exactly as a result of it. So that's 2 parts to it. Right. And then you have those who want to come from abroad. How do they settle in here? Golden visa. How do they do that? I want a property. Take a property, increase in price. You've got this huge influx of variables that are coming in, which are causing the Dubai market to increase. I personally wouldn't say I foresee a sharp decline, right? I think the market will soften. I don't think that the market will plummet.
Us too.
I think it will soften, but that's it, from my perspective anyway.
Right.
You can ask others; they will have a different
No,
input.
no, I think it's interesting. Like everyone has a different take on this, and I think yours is one that I really do align with. I do think there's a need for a softening at some point, because whilst it's interesting for your FDI to come in and like, you know, all the prices to go up, and like I do think that middle Dubai, which is the part of Dubai that, well, I was and I'm very much still a part of, I would say.
Okay.
We need the houses to be not so expensive, right? And so we talk about this from a perspective of investment and, you know, homeowners and things like that, and from a perspective of prop tech companies and things like this. But at the same time, the average person isn't making 100K a month, right? Is not making like even 20, right?
Would be lovely.
Right. Yeah, it would be lovely, but it's just not the case. So like for me, I think the softening in the market is a correction that's needed, maybe not for financially correct reasons or whatever it is, or not because our price per square foot is not that of New York or whatever, but because the average person, the average working person needs it to be that. And I think the market will find a way to kind of meet in the middle. So,
So just to touch on that, what we've done is offered people a platform whereby they can own property. It doesn't necessarily have to be the whole property. So usually with property purchase, you have one of two avenues. You can either go in with a bag full of cash, bag yourself a property, or you're going to have to go to the bank, get yourself a mortgage, pay 20% down payment, pay your monthly installments, and then own something. You don't know what the risk factor around it is quite high. You can default on those payments if you lose your job or what have you. Whereas with crowdfunding, what we do is you don't have to do those monthly payments. You just pop your money in. So even if something happens in the future, you can still cash out. So you will still have a backup plan.
Instantly liquid?
Sorry?
It's just instantly liquid kind of a thing? Like you just...
I mean, within reason, obviously, but you will have the ability to pull out of an investment or to sell your shares or what have you, depending on where you are in that investment process. And so you have that little bit of security, as opposed to always depending on the fact that I have to have a salary and I have to, you know, I have to carry on working in order to be able to pay off my payments, whatever payment plan you might have. For example, if you have a developer's payment plan or you have one from the bank, whatever the case may be, you will have to pay in installments at some point. And that's the one thing that you benefit from with crowdfunding. You know, it's the ability to invest in properties in the UAE, specifically in Dubai, and you're able to own chunks of property, diversify your portfolio, but also diversify your risk, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think, I mean, my concern with fractional real estate investment was always the maturity of liquidity of secondaries, like pretty much, right? Like as in when you're selling off that share that you bought, can you actually exit that opportunity and then take a, you know, and obviously it depends on like the type of property you invest in and what kind of appetite you've signed up for. It's like going to a bank and being like, hey, I'm going to put my money here for 30 years and then going to them and asking them after 2 years, hey, can I have my money back? It's not that. So it's like depending on what you sign up for, which product you...
So for us, you know how I explained to you at the beginning, we have this sort of community, this sense of community that we've harvested. We also do put our money where our mouth is. Recently, we had an event where somebody was in need of money. They had already invested in properties. They came to us and they said, look, I know you're not offering it at the moment, because for us, we have two windows. One, which is in the middle of the year, we do a biannual share transfer, share sale. And she said to us, like, look, I really am in need of the money. This is my situation. Can you help? And we said, you know what? We will make an exceptional case. We will cater to your need, because you want a repeat customer at the end of the day. You want them to have a sense of, these people do care about me, you know, and they have made an allowance for my case specifically. So we went ahead and transferred shares and one bought the others, and that's it. It happens. So when I said you have liquidity, it is to a certain extent whereby we make allowances. So if you are in need of it, then we liquidate for you. We sell your shares to somebody else, and that's it. Done.
That is not a common thing in tech, guys. Just for anyone listening, that doesn't usually. Humanity is not really what most tech founders or CEOs ever.
Look, we
put in
operate differently,
Yeah.
right? I think that's really what stands
think
out.
it's great.
That's something that we do that others don't. And
Yeah.
that's not to say that everybody else does it wrong. No,
Right.
no. It's just how we wanted things. That, we are completely self-funded, by the way, as a company.
Yeah.
And the reason for that at the moment is because we wanted to keep our ethics, our principles, our story in line with that. We didn't want to change it just yet. So because we wanted to be able to help. At the end of the day, this company was actually founded as a result of a social entrepreneur who wanted to help.
Yeah.
We wanted to keep that root. We wanted to keep the roots of the story alive and to water that plant and watch it flourish. And genuinely, when I look at all of our investors, when I see all of the benefits, when I hear stories of, we've had so many stories from women, but I'll give you an example. Somebody was going through financial distress as a result of a divorce. She wasn't getting anything from it. And she turned around and said, I really wish I knew about you guys so I could have supported myself and my kids in the future. So that, when you hear those stories and when you see that they've actually benefited from it in the future, it kind of puts a smile on your face and you're like, okay, these are the fruits of my labor. I'm actually really proud of doing that. So for me, for example, charity work was very important. And that's why I said, when Latifa touched on the helping aspect, it really touched me because I love doing charity work. I mean, one of the things I've always wanted since I was really young is an orphanage. I wanted to be part of giving back to the community or giving back to those who have not been as fortunate as myself. Yeah. And I do consider myself fortunate, irrespective of whether health conditions are involved or what have you. I do consider myself very fortunate. And so I wanted to be able to give back. And still, to this very day, one of my missions in life is actually to go ahead and establish an orphanage. When I was 6, I wanted a donkey farm.
Wow.
Yeah. Not so much on
So, well, we asked about what you wanted to be when you were 7 years old. It's probably good that the charity question came a little bit late.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. My dad has the same thing. He also wants to start an orphanage, just like a thing for him. I've not really fully understood that before, but like I kind of get it. That's a perfect segue, I think, to kind of asking you about what advice you would give your 21-year-old self.
It's actually quite simple. Know your worth. When you're, at least when I was at that age, you kind of get pulled in all sorts of directions. There's a lot of chatter. And sometimes you're quite impressionable at that age. You're coming out of your teenage years, you're in adulthood, and you might do silly things. I know I did. You make a lot of mistakes. That's what I would say. Make a lot of mistakes because you'll learn from them. You'll know what you want and what you don't want. You'll know what your worth is, so that later on when someone comes to tell you, oh, by the way, I can give you this, that, and the other. I can take you to the moon and stars. I can show you this, and you're like, oh, amazing. And then you think to yourself, actually, hold on, no. Let's have a chat about this. No, I can do better. I can be better. They always say that you are the average of your peers. Excel. Don't always be with the peers that are sort of, just going clubbing or, just not to say that you shouldn't have fun, but, just also bear in mind.
I'm not going clubbing, just saying. You do you. You're not offending me. So don't worry.
I'm just saying,
I think clubbing is a waste of time.
It's one of those places where you want to let loose, absolutely fine, do your thing. But also just bear in mind that if you want to excel, do it in a manner whereby you can earn yourself a wealth of knowledge that you can use in the future to pay you dividends. Failure will pay you dividends. It's not finite. Like, you're not going to fail forever, right? But you're going to have moments where you trip up. Clubbing scenes, for example, I knew lots of people that went clubbing. Lots of people that used to go clubbing, that used to do a variety of different things, right?
Our operator, Neetu, is laughing quite hard.
I know.
He's like, that's me.
I can hear. But you know what? At the end of the day, right, you learn certain skill sets, you get out of that scene. You can still do it if you want, but if it's your way of relaxing and getting out of your headspace, and just making your mindset better, then, you know, kudos to you. But at the same time, don't get stuck in that part of your life. Don't go on a rinse and repeat model of, oh, okay, I'm just plodding along in life. I have to go clubbing because my friends are there, and then I'll move on. Because one day, those friends that are with you, that have been clubbing, they would have already found that thing that clicked with them, and then they would have moved out, and you would have just been, you would just be stuck in that same little place, and you'd wonder, where did all the time go?
Yeah.
How did I not get to the place that they went to? It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
So advice, don't get stuck in a rut. Don't be so hard on yourself. You know, you always put yourself down, you know, when you feel like you've done something wrong or what have you. Know your worth. Don't get scared about diving headfirst into something, right? I know so many people always say, oh, but you know what? I don't know these waters. I can't. And it's like, what are you going to lose, right? You're young. You can do whatever you want. Experiment. It's a great time to experiment. I would literally say to myself, go nuts. Experiment with whatever you can, and then you would know what kind of direction you want to go to. For example, at university, I was like, oh, I'll join, you know, I'll go to accounting. That was the field that I was going to go down. And then I was like, do you know what? I really like property, so let's do architecture. And then I started architecture, and I was like, you know what? It's not what I thought it would be. Let's go to accounting again, and then I'm going to bridge my accountancy degree with law, and then I'm going to practice something which combines all of that with real estate. It was like a jumble because my mind was everywhere, except had I had that moment where I was thinking and there was a lot of clarity, I would have probably known where I wanted to go, but only after I would have made those mistakes. So now I actually know, like, I was on the right path that led me to this place. So yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it's just, you know, listen to yourself as well. There is a voice in your head that will tell you if something is right or wrong. There's going to be a lot of background chatter. People will always, and they love to do this, give you unsolicited advice and tell you what you should and should not do.
Yeah.
Also based on stereotypes. And for me as a woman, it was, when are you going to get married? When are you going to have children? But that's not part of my conversation. That's not part of my goals at that time. So you take on all of these things that are said to you. You chuck out what's not really important to you. You know, you obviously take considerate. You also take consideration, or you make considerations to those who are your elders, and you know you can't change their opinion. They're set in their ways and whatnot. So you just take things with a pinch of salt and you move on. But there are those who will always give you unsolicited advice, and you're just like, well, why?
You're just like,
I didn't ask you.
Yeah, what color is your Bugatti, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, I didn't ask you.
Sorry, that was a small aggregate reference. Okay.
It was good.
Yeah.
You know, so don't always listen to the crowd. Everyone will say something to you at every single stage of your life. Every single stage.
Yeah.
And even if you're a mum or a dad, you'll get something from someone. And then you'll start doubting yourself. For what? For someone's opinion? You know?
Yeah.
Someone's opinion is their own opinion based on their own experiences, but that is not for you. You will have to find your way. You can listen to it, maybe take some parts of it here and there, but at the end of the day, you have to do what's right for you.
Yeah,
I wish I knew that.
Yeah, and I think the fear for most people is that everybody's watching me.
Yeah.
Everybody is watching me fail. Oh my God. What happens if I screw this one LinkedIn post up? What will become of me and my reputation in society? As you know, I mean, that's just what, like, most people in, especially, like, I mean, I can speak for the Indian one. You can probably speak for Middle Eastern culture, but like in general, that is the worry, right? Like, what will people think of me? Right.
Yes, absolutely. And we had this discussion outside. I don't usually do these kinds of things. And usually I stutter and I get, you know, my heart starts to palpitate and whatnot. And I'm usually in my comfort zone in the back end of things. And then here I am with you. So. But it's been quite lovely. And sometimes, even as we're having this conversation, I think to myself, did I say the wrong things? Did I stutter? Did I say the wrong word? Is someone going to misunderstand what I'm saying? But also at the front side of my brain, I'm just like, you know what? This is me.
Yeah.
I remember before I came, actually, I was like, oh, I don't know what to wear. Shall I wear something casual? Shall I wear something, business-like? And then I thought to myself, well, you know what? I'll just go halfway.
Yeah.
Comfy on the top and work on the
Formal.
bottom. And there we go. We'll just go that way.
No, I think that's so true. And we all have those moments, right? It's just how willing are people to talk about it. And I'm fully comfortable on record saying that this is my favorite podcast episode to date. Just saying. I'm sorry to the other 15. Guys, you were amazing, but Farah just knocked it out of the park, I have to say. Like, I learned so much. I think that's more why I say that. And also, it's just nice to have a conversation, about these topics that I don't really have every single day, right? Like the real estate stuff we hear all the time, right?
Sure.
And I think fundamentally businesses can be built, people become successful, people might not become successful, you fail, you succeed, et cetera, right? Like life goes on, right? The world keeps moving. Sure. But the really fulfilling moments in life are probably when you get to sit down with a friend and chat. And I think that's really what what I'd like to see the real ones become. So it obviously started off with me having this book to my face,
I saw.
right? And I'd be like, oh my God, did I ask that question? Did I ask that question? So even now I'd glance over just in case I missed anything, but at the same time, it's just so much more engaging to have an actual conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I talk a lot, and people sometimes say it's my forte, but also my downfall. But I like to have conversations with people. I like to have honest conversations with people. I'm not usually the kind of person that runs with a script.
Yeah.
I do wander here and wander there in a conversation, but it's just I would do it as if I was at a coffee shop with a friend.
Yeah.
That's how I like to have these conversations. So.
But you don't drink coffee, so you're decaf, just for everyone's reference, decaf only.
Yeah, otherwise I'll start, having hand tremors and whatnot.
Amazing. And on that note, I'd like to conclude this episode. I think it's been phenomenal. So to all of you that have listened till here, shout out to you guys. Honestly, you made it.
Thank you so much.
So I thank you so much for listening in. Don't forget to subscribe and, tune in for next week's episode with another phenomenal guest. Farah, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. I really appreciated the time, and this was lovely. Thank you.